Good morning, everyone. I, Dr. Manjinder Kaur, welcome all the participants to the first webinar series launched by the Association of Physiologists of Rajasthan, which is the state chapter of Association of Physiologists of India. So here we have with us Dr. Prasun Priya Naik, who is Professor of Physiology from AIIMS, Jodhpur, Dr. Omlata Bhagat, who is also Professor of Physiology from AIIMS, Jodhpur, and the speaker of the day, Dr. Mrunal Phatak, who is Dean Academics and Professor and Head of Department of Physiology at AIIMS, Nagpur. I would like to begin with the introduction of our branch because this is our inaugural session. So I would like to thank our national leaders, our president, Dr. Latika Mohan, our the icon and the stalwarts of physiology. We have Dr. G.K. Pal, whom all of us would like to thank for giving such a good platform to all of us. Dr. Hasmukh Shah, Vice President of the West Zone of SOPI. So all these leaders have been the torchbearers towards the excellence of physiology. This is our the office bearer of the Association of Physiologists of Rajasthan, the state chapter of SOPI, Dr. Jyotsna Shukla ma'am, who is senior professor at SMS Medical College, Jaipur, and she is the patron of and advisor for our association state chapter. I am the president of the state chapter. We also have Dr. Varsha Gupta, vice president of the state chapter, Dr. Chanchal Srivastav, the secretary, Dr. Urmila Chaudhary, joint secretary, Dr. Sangeeta Chauhan, the treasurer, and Dr. Omlata Bhagat, who is the chairperson of the scientific committee of the state chapter of Rajasthan. We have well experienced executive body, and we have all of us have decided to launch the first interactive webinar series, which is launched at the national platform. The first topic which we have chosen after many deliberations is the lifestyle medicine. And while we were deciding on this, there was none other we could think about except Dr. Mrunal Phatak, who is the excellence in this field. And it will be an academic feast hearing to Dr. Mrunal ma'am here. Ma'am is Dean Academics, Professor and Head of Department of Physiology at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Nagpur. She has authored more than 60 papers and 2 books. She has also received many awards like Lifetime Achievement Award, and she has got the Fellowship of Royal College of Biology, Fellowship of International Medical Science Academy, Fellowship of Association of Physiologists of India. She has been awarded as the Best Professor in Physiology Studies, and she has received an award from MedWorld Asia International Excellency Awards, and she has been awarded as the Best Teacher for first year faculty at Government Medical College, Nagpur. We welcome you, ma'am, to this platform.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
Thank you, Dr. Manjinder. Thank you for inviting me, and I congratulate you and the Rajasthan branch of SOPI for initiating this webinar series, which is very pertinent to today's situation. And I'm sure we are going to have a feast of academician and academic gala throughout the monthly webinar series which you are planning. So thank you for inviting me to be the first in the lot. And I think I will start right away if you permit me.
yes, ma'am. I'm putting your presentation now.
All right. So very good morning to all the participants of this first webinar on lifestyle medicine. My topic today is just a brief overview about lifestyle medicine for prevention and management of diseases. Now, the objectives of today's talk will be to understand the current burden of NCDs and the need for lifestyle medicine, know the basic concepts of lifestyle medicine, 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, know the differences between conventional medicine practice and lifestyle medicine practice for management of these diseases, and evidences for the role of lifestyle medicine in management of NCDs. So, what is lifestyle medicine? Do you think it is a new and emerging field? Well, history indicates that lifestyle medicine components were documented as far as early as 2500 years ago, when Hippocrates, the great Greek physician, regarded as father of medicine, used lifestyle modifications like diet and exercise to treat diseases. There was a quote that illnesses do not come upon us out of the blue. They are developed by small sins which we perform daily against nature. And when enough sins are accumulated, then the illnesses will come. There were other stalwarts of lifestyle medicine. Thomas Edison, he quoted that the doctor of future will give no medicine, but will interest his patient in the care of the human frame, in diet, in the cause and prevention of disease. This is so very true. In today's world, we feel that this has come true, which was predicted by him way back in the 1900s. Now, there is Nathan Pritkin Longevity Center, which was the first residential healthcare center that used nutrition, exercise, and education to treat and reverse heart disease. Nowadays, we have got a lot of residential health centers which take care of our health, and this was the first, started way back in 1970. There was a very important study, that is the Complete Health Improvement Program, the CHIP program, conducted by Hans Deal in 1990, where the lifestyle change program encouraged a whole food plant-based diet to prevent and reverse chronic diseases. Coming to a little bit about the certifications, American College of Lifestyle Medicine was the organization which was founded as early as 2004 by John Kelly of the Loma Linda University. He then formed the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine, which was organized by a group of leaders of ACLM in 2016. And they developed a credible certification exam in lifestyle medicine, which is now worldwide recognized. There is an international board of lifestyle medicine which organizes these exams every year. And these IBLM exams are now being offered to everyone across the world, and there are centers in every country. We also have one in India, and the Indian Society of Lifestyle Medicine is coordinating these exams. So those of you wanting to take this exam can become members of the Indian Society of Lifestyle Medicine and can appear for this exam, which is conducted once every year. Now, what is the need for lifestyle medicine in today's world? Lifestyle medicine has formed the first line treatment option in many of the chronic disease guidelines which have been formulated by the WHO, by the ICMR also, and by other organizations in India as well as all over the world. There is very little training of the physicians in clinical nutrition and lifestyle therapeutic modalities. So there is a need to train our physicians in these therapeutic modalities. Now, the medications and procedures which are offered to the patients by the physicians, they are insufficient to stop the negative trajectory of our collective health. So therefore, even in spite of having high levels of antibiotics and procedures and things that we offer to the patients when they come to us, still the negative trajectory of health is not reversed, or it is not stopping also. So this is awakening the medical community and generating interest in the field of lifestyle medicine. Now, what is the definition of lifestyle medicine? I'll follow the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which most of us follow. So it is the use of evidence-based lifestyle therapeutic interventions. So it is evidence-based. every intervention or every therapy that is given by a lifestyle medicine certified physician is evidence based. So there are a number of studies which show that this particular uh, intervention or modification is helpful in that disease. And how much to give, when to give, how much to give, and what to give. All that is evidence based. This includes whole food plant based eating pattern, regular physical activity, restorative sleep, stress management, avoidance of risky substances, and positive social connection. So, these are the things that are dealt with as a primary modality. So, it should be the first line of treatment. It is a primary modality which has to be offered to all the patients. It is delivered by clinicians trained and certified in this specialty. So it is good that if you get trained and certified in lifestyle medicine, so that you are able to give the proper therapeutic interventions to cause the proper results. And this is used to prevent, treat, and often reverse chronic diseases. So this is known as lifestyle medicine first approach. Another definition is application of medical, behavioral, motivational, and environmental modalities to management of lifestyle related health problems in a clinical setting. Now, every lifestyle medicine physician or a trained certified physician should have a good knowledge about self management, because teaching self care and self management are very important elements of lifestyle medicine. Some physician who's not following the principles what he's preaching, then you're not able to get it across to the patients convincingly. So self care and self management is something you have to learn. Hopefully by the end of my webinar, most of you will be able to at least take home some messages for self care and self management. Now, global context of NCDs. The NCDs kill about 45 million people every year. That is 71% of all the deaths which occur globally are due to NCDs. More than 15 million people die from NCDs between the age of 30 to 69 years. And 85% of these deaths occur in the low and middle income countries. So, health behaviors, it has been observed that health behaviors determine more than 80% of these premature deaths, the chronic disease, the healthcare costs, and the disability. They have seen that about 80% of all the NCD deaths are caused by 4 NCDs. Cardiovascular disease, about 17.9 million annually, cancers, 9 million, respiratory diseases, 3.8 million, diabetes 2 million, which includes the renal disease deaths also. So these 4 NCDs account for 80% of all the NCD deaths, and you can see that the 4 main causes resulting in these deaths due to NCDs is unhealthy eating, tobacco use, physical inactivity, and excess alcohol. India too is now alarmingly showing the NCD trend, as the world is showing, that the estimated proportion of deaths due to NCDs has increased from 37% in 1990 to 66.6% in 2020. So it's an alarming rate by which it has grown. Now, what causes the NCD development? We as physiologists know this very well. I'll just touch upon it quickly, that there are genetic factors. You have a family history of diabetes, hypertension, you are more prone to it. So these are the genetic factors. So your gun is loaded because your genes are loaded with those predisposition. What triggers or what shoots the trigger is your diet, your environmental exposure, and your lifestyle changes. So if you follow an unhealthy lifestyle, if your diet is not good, and you are environmentally exposed to toxins and other allergens, then the loaded gun, the trigger is going to be pulled and you are going to develop the NCDs. Now, what happens at the cellular level is there is an oxidative stress because of the reactive oxygen species, resulting in damage at the cellular level, at the biomolecular level, at the DNA level, and also at the chromatid level. So this results in a number of non-communicable diseases which are evident in life. So this is one slide which I felt quite explanatory, where you can see mental stress, sleep deprivation, sedentary lifestyle, excess calorie intake, and unhealthy diet. All of this is resulting in coronary heart disease, heart failure, vascular disease, stroke, vascular dementia, and insulin resistance, diabetes mellitus, fatty liver, and all the NCDs which we have seen. So as a physiologist, we know the mechanism by which this occurs. So NCDs are now known as lifestyle induced chronic diseases. So if you correct your lifestyle, you are able to prevent or even reverse the existing NCDs. So this is a spectrum which is showing, and this spectrum is ever increasing. We don't want it to be a complete circle. It's a half circle right now, which is of concern. So we have to stop at this level by introducing lifestyle medicine for these diseases. Now, this is one way by which these lifestyle changes, like alcohol, inactivity, inappropriate diet, stress, inadequate sleep, causes obesity or causes metabolic inflammation. So the root cause of NCDs is the metabolic inflammation, which is caused by these lifestyle derangements. And the metabolic inflammation results in the NCDs, resulting in premature death. So the causal chain explains the risk factor approach that we have to have. First, we have to screen for the behavioral risk factors. If they are present, then you screen for the physiological risk factors, and then you look for the disease outcome, whether it is there and whether there is a probability or a relative risk for these individuals. Now, what is the management? What do you think will be the management of these diseases? Many voices across the globe are coming together, and American College of Lifestyle Medicine has now proposed and collected all their sayings, and saying that you have to first present the patient with a lifestyle first approach, lifestyle modification first approach, and not with a bunch of pills. So the pills have to be reduced or not given at all, and you first present a whole food plant based lifestyle along with other pillars of lifestyle medicine. Now, how does conventional medicine differ from lifestyle medicine? Conventional medicine treats the individual risk factors, whereas lifestyle medicine treats the with a goal of treating the primary, secondary, and tertiary disease. The patient in conventional medicine is passive. You just give these medicines and you have to take those medicines as per the prescription. The patient has no say in that. Whereas in lifestyle medicine practice, patient is an active partner. So he can discuss the pros and cons, the increase or the decrease of the lifestyle modifications, therapeutic interventions. Medication is the end treatment in conventional medicine, whereas in lifestyle medicine, it is just an adjunct. It may or may not be needed. Responsibility of, in conventional medicine, the responsibility of treatment is mainly of the physician, whereas in lifestyle medicine, it is patient centered. The patient is in command, and adherence and motivation of the patient plays a main role in the success of the treatment. So this is how it is. The goal of classic medical model is to manage the disease once it sets in, whereas a lifestyle medicine physician looks at the primary, secondary, as well as tertiary prevention of disease and actual reversal of disease if it sets in. Now, to give you a brief overview of the evidence, we will go into the studies one by one, pillar wise later on. There are many studies, huge data of information. If you Google on the internet, that so many studies of different varieties. There are cohort studies, there are in silico clinical trials, there are a number of RCTs, meta-analysis, big data, bioinformatics. All these are there to show that lifestyle medicine interventions work at different levels to stop the progression or the settlement of the NCDs. So unhealthy lifestyle, if you have, it causes microbiome alterations, epigenetic changes, and cellular stress. And lifestyle interventions can stop this. Lifestyle interventions can also stop the inflammation produced by these changes. and in turn can stop the development of the various NCDs or can cause a relapse or remission of the diseases. Now, which are the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine that need to be looked into? So, these are the ones: nutrition, stress management, social connection, restorative sleep, physical activity, and avoiding risky substances. So, what is it in a nutshell? Each one of this can form a complete domain or a complete webinar or a complete one-day workshop wherein we can go into the depths and of each of the pillar. But just to give you in a nutshell, nutrition, whole food plant predominant diet. It's a predominant diet. We are not saying that you have to have only whole foods or only plants. So it's a predominant diet consisting of whole foods and plant diet with vegetables, fruits, beans, lentils, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. So, all these components are important to give you a balanced diet, to balance your macronutrient, micronutrient, and other nutritional requirements, minimizing or excluding meat, eggs, and dairy. Physical activity, regular physical activity recommended is 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity cardiovascular activity per week, twice weekly resistance training, flexibility of 10 minutes 2 to 3 days a week, and exercises to improve balance 3 times a week. Now, why this variety? I will be telling you later on, because you have to address the different components of physical activity. Therefore, these spectrum is given and recommended. Restorative sleep. Now, it's not only sleep, it is restorative sleep. Because sleep, as a physiologist, we know it is for rejuvenation or restoration of our physiological mechanisms. So, sleep deprivation negatively impacts the immune, dermatologic, muscular, nervous, you just name it, and it affects every system. Sleep of at least 7 to 9 hours is required for a healthy life. Stress management. In today's world, you cannot avoid stress. You have to learn to manage stress. So there are ways: physical activity, yoga, mindfulness, meditation. All this can make the individual more resilient to stress, manage stress, or reduce stress. Avoid risky substances like tobacco, drugs, alcohol, because they are number one carcinogens, number one risk factors for all these NCDs and for causing cellular damage. Now, what the lifestyle medicine practitioners do is that they have several approaches to manage this, such as listening, counseling, connecting, and using a coach approach. Now, what is this coach approach? We will see later on. Next pillar is social connectedness. The American Heart Association has certified that loneliness is a single most risk factor which increases the risk of myocardial infarction. And being socially connected improves your health and well-being. Lifestyle medicine practitioner will focus on coaching the individual to catalyze on positive connections and find a way to cope and solve the problems. So lifestyle medicines, as I said, use a coach approach and not an expert approach. So they empower the patient. The patient makes the decisions as to what is to be done to deal with the disease that the patient is having, and what is possible from the patient's side to do and what is not possible. If it is not possible, what is hindering these kind of changes from occurring, and all these decisions are then taken by the patient with a guidance from the coach. Medicine is not only a science, it is an art. It does not consist of compounding pills and plasters, but it deals with the very processes of life which must be understood before they may be guided. So who else but a physiologist understands these processes? And therefore, this is a field where the physiologist can take the steering. They can come into clinical practice. They can practice lifestyle medicine, which is going to, in 10 years or 15 years down the line, this is going to be the mainstay of medicine. So I appeal to all the physiologists to come into this in a big force, and we as a community of physiology should promote lifestyle medicine practice as a clinical practice by physiologists. There's a quote by Hippocrates: if someone wishes for good health, one must first ask oneself, is he ready to do away with the reasons for his illness? Only then it is possible to help him. On the basis of this, there was a trans theoretical model of behavioral change, which is proposed by Proshka and de Clement, which is very well accepted. And on the basis of this model, all the treatment or therapeutic interventions are designed. So, this is a model showing the readiness to change. It is a dynamic process. It is going to be different for every pillar. We have seen 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. So, it is going to be different in an individual for each pillar. The pros and cons of changing generates the ambivalence or generates the change. Now, in short, I will tell you what are the stages of this behavior change. The first stage is the pre-contemplation, where the patient is unaware of the problem. The patient is not knowing that there is something wrong with his lifestyle which is causing his disease. So he's totally unaware. Now you have to deal with this patient in a different manner. Contemplation is the next stage, where the patient is aware of the problem. He knows that his wrong nutrition is causing his diabetes. And he knows that if he corrects his nutrition, maybe his diabetes will be corrected. So he knows it. Next stage is preparation, where he knows that these are the dietary changes he needs to do, and he's ready to take action. He's ready to implement it in order to manage his diabetes. Next stage is action, where he's already started implementing the dietary changes so that his diabetes is controlled, and this he has been doing for a period of 1 to 2 months. Maintenance is he is implemented the complete dietary regime, the correct dietary regime suggested to him by the lifestyle medicine physician to correct his diabetes for a period of more than 6 months. So he has come to a stage of maintenance. After this, the lifestyle medicine physician is no longer needed. The need will arise only if there is a relapse. So if after maintenance the patient goes into relapse, he comes down straight away to the contemplation phase. Or if there is a termination, he has formed a habit and he refuses to go back to the old habits, and he has now recovered or caused remission of his disease. Now, what I said in the second point is that it's a dynamic process. Now, why is it a dynamic process and why it is different for different pillars? A person may be very much prone to doing dietary changes for diabetes. I'm okay with eating right. I'm okay with eating salads and vegetables, but I'm not okay with exercising. I don't like exercise. So I'm in a pre-contemplation phase for exercise pillar, but I'm in a contemplation or a preparation phase in the nutrition pillar. So that is how for every pillar, this stage of readiness is different and it has to be dealt differently. Now, even in the process of treatment, because you know that the treatment of lifestyle medicine is quite long. So even during the treatment, these patients keep on climbing up the ladder or coming back down the ladder. There's a wedding in the family and I'm not able to follow. I'm in the action phase, but now there's a wedding and I did not follow it. So I've come back now. I have to start from all over again. So these are the dynamic changes which occur during the process of change in a single patient while we are consulting these patients. So these are some of the proposed methods by which we can do this, and these are stage matched interventions. So you have to first ascertain the stage of the patient, the readiness of the patient to change. If the patient is not ready, the practitioner tasks are different. If the patient is getting ready, the tasks are different. If he's already ready to do it, you have to give him the SMART goals. You have to set the goals. I'll tell you what are SMART goals and how they are to be formed. If he's in a maintenance dose, then you have to give him motivational help to stick to it, and then you have to give it accordingly. Now, two of the main things what are important is motivational interviewing and cognitive behavioral therapy. So what is motivational interviewing is that it is a counseling method which enhances motivation. And these techniques are used by the practitioner, which can tailor motivational strategies to enhance the stage of readiness of the patient. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps the people to learn how to identify and change their thoughts. The thought patterns which are negative, which are trying to get them off balance from lifestyle intervention, they are to be reduced and the positive thoughts need to be encouraged. Now, coming to each of the pillars. First pillar, most important, nutrition. What is a whole food plant based diet? So, whole food is that it is a single ingredient food which is unprocessed or minimally processed or as they exist in nature. Nothing is added and nothing is removed from the food after it is picked up from nature. Example, I'll be giving you of whole food. Plant based, more than 95% of calories should be coming from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. Less than 20% should come from processed food, and less than 5% from animal products. So what we were saying, that processed food should be avoided and animal food should be avoided. But what we offer our patients is that it's a whole food plant predominant diet. So we do not give them that no, you cannot have any of the animal foods or you cannot have any of the processed foods. It is really not possible in the long run. And therefore, a plant predominant diet or a whole food plant predominant diet allows less than 20% of processed foods and less than 5% of animal foods in their diet. Now, what we should learn to read is the nutrition labels. So every packet that you have or you purchase, it has nutrition labels. And the nutrition label gives mainly 4 information, which is most important for you. Serving information, like how many servings are there in that container. This is a standard serving size. It does not mean the portion size. Like some people can have a packet of chips containing 4 servings, but have it in one go. So that portion size is different and the serving size is different. Coming to calories, how much calories are there in each serving, which is recommended. Then the nutrients, which are the nutrients present in that, and percent DV or daily value. It gives you a quick guide about the percent daily value or the amount of nutrient that serving, that one serving of that material is going to give you if you are consuming a 2000 calorie diet. So this is the standard reference which has been accepted or devised by the US Food and Drugs Association and accepted worldwide. Now, what is to be seen when we read the food labels? Quickly, you have to see that any of these ingredients percent DV value should be between 5 to 20%. Less than 5% means it is low. More than 20% means it is high. Okay, so good things can be more than 20%, but the bad ones like trans fats, cholesterol should definitely be below 5%. So to give you an example of whole food, you have got apple juice and a whole apple. So you can see that the calories in the apple juice are 114, whereas the calories in an apple 95. And you can see the fiber, the dietary fiber has been reduced from 18% to 2%. And therefore, whole foods are recommended. Many of us feel we go on a diet and apple juice is very healthy. But no, the dietary fiber which is being given by a whole apple is much, much more. And therefore, apple is a healthier option than apple juice. Coming to Appy Fizz, which is very well marketed in India. What I would like to show you here is see the ingredients list. That is something again available on the packet. It has to be shown. More the number of items in the ingredients list, more processed is the food. So if you have 1 or 2 ingredients in the ingredient list, it's a whole food. But if you have a number of them, like you can see here, there are acidity regulators and preservatives and all those things. So a lot of chemicals are being added into this. So this is a processed food. You can see that the added sugars in Appy Fizz is 24%, more than 20%. So these sugars are detrimental. And the dietary fiber you can see in an apple is much more, whereas there is no fiber in a juice. Coming to plant-based. Why plant-based? We have told about the whole food. Now, why plant-based? Now, the plant-based the food is full of fiber and has no cholesterol, whereas the animal food has no fiber and it has very high cholesterol. So this is shown by this. You have a mutton curry and a mixed vegetable. You can see that the total fat in a mixed vegetable is just 1%, whereas in a mutton curry it is 43%, with saturated fats being 45%. So they are very, very harmful. And the dietary fiber in the mutton curry is just 6%, whereas fiber in the vegetable is 17%. Cholesterol in the mixed vegetable is 0%, and here it is 30%. Of course, the protein content is more in a mutton curry, but what we always advocate is you look at the food label as a whole label. So if you see the protein content and you say, yes, the non-veg, this is high in protein, we should have it. But how many bad things you are consuming along with that high protein content? It's a myth that non-veg food is high in protein and vegetarians cannot get enough protein. There are a number of vegetarian meals which can provide equal amounts of proteins to the individual. So applying the precautionary principles of nutrition to cancer, this has been seen that non-veg food and processed foods increases the incidence or the risk of colorectal cancer and prostate cancer, whereas plant-based food decreases the incidence of breast cancer and all cancers. So therefore, this is also implemented in cancer. Caldwell Esselstyn, a very renowned figure in lifestyle medicine, says that some people think plant-based diet and whole foods diet is an extreme step. It's just impossible to follow. Why are you making me do these extreme things? But 500,000 people a year will have their chests opened up and vein taken up from their leg and soon into their coronary arteries. Isn't that extreme? So you have to decide which is extreme and where you would want to go. Now, inflammation is the unifying pathologic mediator for all these diseases. So anti-inflammatory foods are to be incorporated to reduce the inflammation. Now, for United States of America, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine has devised this plate where you can see 50% of your plate should be fruits and vegetables, and preferably raw, but they can be cooked if it doesn't suit you. So fruits and vegetables forms 50% of your plate. The other 50% is divided into two, consisting of plant proteins and whole grains. And the beverage that they suggest is only water. Indians have modified this. So ICMR has come up with this plate for the Indians, where again, half of the plate is fruits and vegetables, but the other half is only divided with cereals or whole grains. And the protein component is divided into pulses, little amount of eggs and fish is added, and dairy, milk, and curd, this is also added. Some amount of oils is also added because the Indian cooking, we are not used to having zero oil cooking, which has now come up very well. There are many videos and many sites which help you into zero oil cooking. And we in Lifestyle Medicine Clinic, in our college, we also advocate these culinary classes where we teach how to have a zero oil cooking for all the routine vegetables or routine cooking that we as Indians have in our homes. Now coming to the evidences. So these are the four stalwart studies showing that lifestyle medicine does work in these diseases. So we will go into these studies one by one quickly. Lifestyle Heart Trial conducted by Dean Ornish, another stalwart of lifestyle medicine. What was done was a prospective RCT was done, which was published in Lancet in the 1990s, where patients with angiographically documented coronary artery disease were selected. the number was 48. They were divided into an experimental group of 28 and a control group of 20. Experimental group was given low-fat vegetarian diet, exercise, stress management, smoking cessation, and group support. Whereas in the control group, they were not asked to do any specific changes, but were free to do whatever they wanted, and usual care was given to them. Now, quantitative coronary angiography was done after 1 year, and it is seen that the average person diameter, you can see the changes, how it has decreased in the experimental group, whereas it has increased in the control group. So, the intensive lifestyle changes, okay. So, next one was what they did was they did a 5-year follow-up study of these patients. After 1 year, they found these changes. So they wanted to see the feasibility for 5 years, whether the adherence was there for 5 years and whether the effects were more after 5 years of these lifestyle changes on coronary artery disease. What they found was that the adherence was 71% in the experimental group. So almost 20 out of 28 were adherent. 75% made moderate changes in the control group also. The person diameter stenosis showed a relative improvement of 7.9% in the experimental group after 5 years, and in the control group was a relative worsening of 27.7%. And the adverse cardiac events were reported during this 5-year period were double in the control group. So there were 45 in the control group and only 25 in the experimental group. So the conclusion is that it does work. Lifestyle modifications does work for coronary atherosclerosis, and a 5-year follow-up is much better than a 1-year one. So this is another thing they observed, that how it does that is that it restores the myocardial perfusion. You can see that lifestyle intervention modifications have restored the myocardial perfusion as seen in the tomography pictures. Then also you can see that the coronary angiography shows that the left anterior descending artery has completely become patent after 32 months of plant-based diet. Now, second study is the dietary portfolio of cholesterol-lowering foods versus statins. So whether the statins are good or a cholesterol-lowering food itself is enough in managing the inflammation. So what they studied, the outcome was the serum lipids and the C-reactive proteins. So to enhance the diet in lowering cholesterol, as per the recommendations of Adult Treatment Panel 3 of the National Cholesterol Education Program. So what was done, 46 patients who were hyperlipidemic were chosen, and on an OPD basis, they were followed for a period of 1 month. The control group had a diet with a low saturated fat, or the routine diet which is given to hyperlipidemic patients. Treatment group had the same diet plus statin. Experimental group had a diet which was cholesterol lowering, rich in plant sterols, soy proteins, viscous fibers, and almonds. What was observed was that the LDL reduced to 28.6% in experimental group, whereas in the treatment group it was 30.9%. And CRP reduced 28.2% in the experimental group as against 33.3% in the treatment group. So there was no significant difference between statin introduction and dietary portfolio treatment. So where is the need to introduce statin? You can just introduce a cholesterol lowering dietary portfolio to these patients and get the same results as by giving statins. The Ornish Lifestyle Intervention Trial for Prostate Cancer. This was one of its kind in cancer, where they studied the genetic changes which occurred in prostate cancer patients. So they studied the molecular mechanism. They conducted a pilot study in 30 patients with low-risk prostate cancer who did not want any surgery or hormonal therapy or radiation or other type of treatment, and they were happy with only nutrition and lifestyle intervention. So there was a strict surveillance of tumor progression during this time. And consistent with the previous studies, there were significant improvements in weight, abdominal obesity, blood pressure, lipid profile, and tumor progression was also less. Gene expression profiles were studied in these 30 patients, and they were observed that 48 genes showed upregulation and 453 genes showed downregulation transcript. So therefore, at the level of the genetic mutations or regulation, these lifestyle modifications do work in prostate cancer patients. What happened? My slides are not changing. Okay, sorry. Okay, so red meat consumption. So 3 cohorts in the US were studied. First was the health professionals follow-up study, 37,000 men. Then there was a nurses health study 1 and 2, in which the nurses were studied, 79,000 in study 1 and 87,000 in study 2. And the diet was assessed by validated questionnaires, and the data was updated every 4 years. And then diabetes mellitus was seen. Then unprocessed red meat and processed red meat showed a relative risk of 1.19 and 1.51. And if this red meat was replaced by nuts, whole grains, or low fat dairy products, then the relative risk decreases. And this is shown that it is about 16 to 35% lower if you replace the meat with nuts, dairy products, low fat dairy products, and whole grains. Coming to physical fitness, the next pillar. So it is the ability to perform day-to-day normal activities with vigor, alertness, without fatigue, with ample energy, to enjoy leisure time pursuits, to meet any unforeseen emergencies, and improve the immune system. So you see the variety of things that are required for physical fitness, and therefore the components of physical fitness are many. They are health related or skill related, and these have been proposed by the ACLM as well as by the Fit India guidelines. Smart goals need to be given for each of these components. So they have to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So these are the recommendations. These are the SMART goals which are recommended. I have already touched upon this. So these are the current recommendations of physical activity: flexibility related, strength related, endurance related. So you have to incorporate all the components of physical activity in order to take care of these health components of physical activity. Yoga is also being incorporated. This protocol has been advocated by the Fit India guidelines for adults in the age group of 18 to 35 years of age. So these are also given to the patients and taught to the patients in the clinic. We have a certified yoga instructor who teaches these yogasanas. We have also created videos for this, in which the patients can watch the videos as they are waiting for their consultation, and they can learn how to do the exercises as well as the yogasanas. There is one alarming factor which we all have to keep in mind, is there are many cardiovascular causes of exercise related sudden deaths in young athletes. So there are many celebrities we know who are dying, other people also, but we are not aware. But the celebrities, we have seen that they are working out in the gym and they fall and they die. So the studies done by these 3 people, Van Camp, Maron, and Cornado, they have listed the various reasons for these kind of deaths, and the most common causes are congenital and hereditary abnormalities, including hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, coronary artery abnormalities, and aortic stenosis. Now you can see that the relative risk of dying or these MI during exercise is much higher in a sedentary subject, but it goes on reducing in an active subject. But nevertheless, it is present in case any of these cardiac anomalies are there in the subject. So therefore, while giving intensive exercise or as a therapeutic modality to a patient, we have to refer him to a cardiologist and get a no objection from the cardiologist to for him to engage in these kind of intensive exercises. Now, coming to landmark RCTs of physical activity in diabetes, there are two I'll touch upon. Diabetes Prevention Program Research Group studied 3,234 patients with pre-diabetes in a 2.8 years follow-up, comparing nutrition and 150 minutes of physical activity per week against metformin or placebo, and they concluded that metformin reduced the incidence of diabetes mellitus by 31% as compared to placebo, but lifestyle medicine reduced it by 58%. There's another trial, Look Ahead trial, which is Action for Health in Diabetes, where older adults were studied and they were given a diet which was energy deficient, and they were given 175 minutes of moderate exercise per week. And another group was given only diabetes support and education. What was observed was there was a significant weight loss, improved cardiovascular fitness, improvement in blood glucose, lipids, and blood pressure. Cardiovascular disease, when aerobic resistance and combined exercise program was given for 8 weeks, blood pressure reduced by 4 millimeters, body weight reduced, fat mass reduced, waist circumference also reduced by 1.7 centimeters. Lean mass increased and the VO2 max also increased. Exercise compared with the percutaneous coronary intervention. 12 months RCT was done in a stable coronary artery disease patients who were males, 101 in number. Half of them were given PCI and half of them 20 minutes of bicycle ergometry per day. The event-free survival in PCI group was 70%, whereas in the bicycle ergometry it was 88%. Now, in cancer also, many studies are there where up to 18 weeks supervised exercise intervention was studied in breast and colon cancer, and it has been seen that the physical activity, fatigue levels, and the quality of life in these patients is much, much improved. Third pillar is sleep, which is a cyclical, temporary physiological state of loss of consciousness that is readily, promptly, and completely reversed by appropriate stimuli. Sleep deprivation, as you know, as physiologists, you know that it increases the sympathetic activity and decreases the parasympathetic activity, increases ghrelin, reduces leptin. So, studies on sleep and lifestyle medicine. Sleep deprived experimental rats died after several days. This was studied in 1983. In 2020, there was a study which showed that reactive oxygen species accumulation in the gut causes death in sleep deprived animals. Sleep deprivation and risk for sleep deprivation and risk for dementia and cognitive decline was also studied. Then the molecular pathways which were induced by sleep deprivation were studied, and they have seen that it works at the immune level. Study on doctors showed that increased markers of DNA damage and decreased markers of DNA repair was seen in shift workers. So sleep deprivation due to shift work in doctors causes deleterious effect on their DNAs. There is increased risk of subclinical multi-territory atherosclerosis associated with sleep duration and sleep quality. One night sleep deprivation impacts the beta amyloid burden in the brain regions that has been implicated in the Alzheimer's disease. Long-term perturbations induced by lack of sleep. So these are at the level of the gene transcription. So these have also been studied, and sleep deprivation is associated with gene expression. So this is what is the diagram which shows that sleep loss due to insufficient sleep or due to sleep disorders. If there are sleep disorders, of course, you have to manage it as a different modality. But insufficient sleep or sleep deprivation due to lifestyle diseases, lifestyle changes can be taken care, and the moderators are diet, exercise, and stress. Now, coming to food and sleep, I think I'll be a little short about this so that we'll have other sessions which will deliberate on this. So there are ways in which food can alter your sleep schedules. You can either make a person sleep more, sleep less, sleep earlier, sleep late, by moderating the diet, by the carbs, the fats, the caffeine, the nicotine, the snacking. All this can be done. Then also carbohydrates have a main role in modulating this. So the sleep can be modulated by giving this type of a diet to the sleep deprived patients. Melatonin is required for sleep. It increases, then the sleep is induced. So melatonin rich foods like cherries, nuts like walnuts, pistachios can be added to the diet to induce sleep. Physical activity can be given to induce sleep. So regular physical activity is required. You should not do heavy exercise near bedtime, and evening exercise is a phase delaying effect on sleep. So all these are taken into consideration while giving the therapeutic interventions to these patients. So this is a take-home lifestyle advice for better sleep. Sleep hygiene. You make a proper preparation of bedtime. Environment you have to make. You have to avoid the blue light totally, at least 1 hour before bedtime. So no TV, no laptop, no mobile, at least 1 hour before bedtime, because this suprachiasmatic nucleus goes haywire and our circadian rhythm is then disturbed. Food, I have already told you. Coming to the last three pillars, I'll take it together, because stress is a very important pillar. Just one stress makes a complete dishevel of your healthy life, resulting in an unhealthy life. Stressful stimuli have got physical as well as psychological components through the activation of the sympathetic system, and it alters the cardiovascular and the metabolic functions, and also causes suppression of immunity. What are the means by which the stress can be managed? Motivational interviewing, I've already told you. So, 4 guiding principles of motivational interviewing: resist the writing reflex, understand the patient's own motivations, listen with empathy, and empower the patient. So, this is what a physician or lifestyle medicine physician has to do while counseling these patients. And the basic skills of motivational interviewing is ask open ended questions, make affirmations, use reflections, and use summarizing. So, this is known as ORS approach. Next is cognitive behavioral therapy. As you know, that your emotions drive your thoughts, and the thoughts decide your behavior. So if you change your thoughts, you're going to change your behaviors. Next is positive psychology. These are the 2 great scientists who have brought the positive psychology into this, and it is about valued subjective experiences in the past, in the present, and in the future. So in the past, how good is your past? Whether you're contented, you're satisfied. So you know that you have got adverse childhood events, then you have got a mental derangement. So these are the things which you have to think about. The past, you have to interview the patient accordingly. For the future, hope and optimism. So this is what a patient is, any person lives on hope and optimism. And in the present, the flow and the happiness, how happy you are in the present situation. So this is happiness, pleasant life, meaningful life, and good life. So a confluence of all these 3 gives you happiness. So what are the ways by which you can use positive psychology to give happiness to your patients? You can have a beautiful day. You can have a walk in nature, being with nature. It gives you back to the natural environment with friends, with family, and you feel happy. Gratitude letter. Always have a habit of thanking the Almighty, thanking all the people who are in your life, making your life meaningful, making your life pleasant, making your life good. Strengths date. You should have a list wherein what are your strengths and what are your drawbacks. Work on increasing your strengths and work on increasing or building your habits depending on your strengths. Fun philanthropy. You give philanthropy is something, you donate to people. When you have something, you have 10 rupees, you're donating even 1 rupee, it gives you a sense of happiness. You are making somebody's life meaningful, happy, useful. So you have a fun philanthropy. Go to a childhood or a old age home, and have a picnic with them, have a dinner with them, or have a party with them on your birthday. So this is known as fun philanthropy. In turn, you are going to get happiness in return. So these are the methods of positive psychology which we give to the patients depending on his stage of readiness. Mindfulness practice, we all know about mindfulness meditation. So this is a type of meditation in which you are aware, you are sensing and feeling in the movement without any interpretation or judgment. Then coming to social connectedness, as told that loneliness and isolation is very bad. It causes a increased mortality. So lifestyle medicine physicians support the people to develop and sustain healthy, meaningful relationships, to reduce the strength and to improve their mental health. Toxic substances like alcohol, smoking, then even social media use or internet use or mobile phone use, all these are addictions, and lifestyle medicine physicians have these various approaches like these to treat the various addictions as per the requirement of the patient. Now, a little bit about the lifestyle intervention clinic at AIIMS Nagpur. We initiated it in 2021 on the guidelines of American College of Lifestyle Medicine and Indian Society of Lifestyle Medicine. The challenges we faced were preparing the SOPs and the case sheets, training of the faculty and support staff, advocating referral of patients, time management, follow-up measures, and awareness drives. So each one of us, we worked and we prepared the SOPs and case sheets. I'll show you some of them. We trained the faculty. Now there are many avenues nowadays which are available for getting yourself trained in lifestyle medicine. As I told you, the best and the most easily available is the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. You also have the British College of Lifestyle Medicine or the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine. Then you have many courses in India also which are available, and very soon at AIIMS Nagpur we will be starting a course on lifestyle medicine. So I invite you all to be a part of it and be a strong supporter and a strong learner of lifestyle medicine. So we got each one of our faculty got trained in all these different courses by different societies, and that is how we got a variety from all the different societies and different organizations, and now we are devising the best of that to be offered to all the other physiologists. Referral of patients from other others. So we had to create a lot of awareness amongst the physicians of our institute so that the patients could be referred from them to our clinic. Time management. One patient of lifestyle medicine in visit one requires at least 1.5 hours. So managing the time during the OPD hours and managing the faculty to be posted there and managing all this was quite a task, and we have to do a lot of talking. So if you have to see 5 or 6 patients in a day, imagine you are talking almost 6 hours in a day. So that was quite a task. So we were able to manage it. Follow-up measures, for that we have devised an app which we give to our patients, and they put it out to us, and we are able to make modifications on the app also. We have regular follow-up. Our technician phones up the patients and keeps a follow-up. So this is how we have devised many follow-up measures. And awareness drives is we conduct many workshops in schools, in IT sectors, in factories, in even in for physicians, and this in many conferences, like we had in microbiology conference, we had in a medicine conference. So these even teaching our physician friends, that is also very, very important. So these are some of the things that we have devised. This is the body composition machine that we use for analyzing the body composition. These are the radars we have made, we have devised ourselves for managing the nutrition and the physical activity components. This is the sleep scale which we use. This is the habit tracker also we have devised. So lifestyle intervention clinic in AIIMS Nagpur began on 11th October 2021. Up to date, we have about 1,500 patients plus. We have consulted, referred from general medicine, OBGY, psychiatry, dermatology, pulmonary medicine, cardiology. Many of them are self-referred, and the interesting thing is that they were accompanying persons who were listening to the, like most of us, what we do is the husband and wife is taken together in the consultation, because the wife is going to cook for the husband, or the husband is going to help the wife in following this. So whenever one of the partner was being consulted, the other one got motivated and registered in our clinic as a self supported patient, and then we were increasing the patients. We consulted the patients for diabetes mellitus, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, PCOS, weight loss, dyslipidemia, menopausal symptoms, and we have seen improvement in about 80% of patients. There was a remission in 43% of diabetic patients and a relapse in 21% patients. 36% patients were lost to follow up. So this is a brief history of our lifestyle intervention clinic at AIMS Nagpur, which we are running, I must say, quite successfully. And this is my team. We advocate that lifestyle changes are a must, are required for long, healthy, and happy life. So we should begin right away. And thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for such a wonderful presentation, and it was a very, very thought-provoking session for all of us. Ma'am, we have received two questions as of now. The first is this: they are asking, can a physiologist indulge in a lifestyle modification practice?
Yes, absolutely, yes. You can.
And another question is, ma'am, how can we open a lifestyle clinic?
Yeah, that's why I showed the challenges that we had, right? So first and foremost, you have to get equipped. So you have to do some sort of certification that will give you a proper direction, because see, the methods that are used in lifestyle modifications are nothing new. They have been told way back. Our sages used to follow this type of lifestyle, so it is just old wine in new bottle, I must say. So these changes, they have to be structured and have to be made in a therapeutic intervention fashion, which is possible only after proper certification. So I suggest that a person who wants to go into clinical practice of lifestyle medicine should first get certified with a proper certification, whichever they want, whichever is feasible for them. And after the certification, then go into all devising each pillar, devising the case sheet, devising the papers, devising the tools for assessment of the trans theoretical model, the stage of change. Accordingly, once the patient is evaluated and the stage of change for each pillar is there, then the therapeutic interventions are quite simple to administer.
So I hope our participants have got their answers. If you still have any questions, you can write to the email. I can type on the comment box. It is sopraj@gmail.com. We will take it to ma'am. Um, I'm just typing our email address. So in your queries, you can forward to us, write to us, and we will forward it to ma'am for your further queries. And it's a request to all the viewers to please subscribe and share our channel so that you are benefited with the upcoming webinars. And ma'am is going to be our guiding light throughout the series of lifestyle medicine. Ma'am has given her consent to be sharing her expertise with us so that we can plan the future webinars accordingly. So our scientific committee, ma'am, has also proposed that we will be giving certificates to all the participants when they will give us the feedback for this lecture. And in the upcoming lectures also, the certificates would be given based on the feedback shared by the participants. And if there are participants who have attended more than 80% of these series on the lifestyle medicine, we can issue them a comprehensive certificate which can add to their skill set. With that, uh, we will be now moving forward with the next webinar on, the upcoming webinars, which would be there on the one of the pillars. We'll take one pillar, one of these pillars one by one in the upcoming webinars. So the first one, we are picking up the physical activity, ma'am. And the speaker is Dr. Deepti Magan. She's an associate professor at AIMS Bathinda. She has volunteered to talk on the physiology of yoga in the lifestyle medicine. So for now, I would like to call upon Dr. Nayak for some more questions. I invite Dr. Nayak, sir. He has some interactive questions with us. Sir, you're not audible.
You're not audible, yeah.
Thank you, madam, for inviting me. And Renal madam, it was so nice lecture. It's like really a square presentation. Everything you have covered and nothing left. And in between, while I was listening to this, I was just thinking of asking you a question like, how about the motivation of the patient? Those who are continuing the motivation is tough, as you are
Yes.
suggesting. It's a modification of the lifestyle.
Yes,
So I may maybe you can think of a motivation scale or something for the initiation.
yes.
As
So
I was saying that
follow up is very important. Follow up and talking to the patients continuously.
exactly, madam. I noticed that around 36% you have lost follow up.
Yes.
So that's a good number.
Yes.
And but I appreciate that the way you are thinking of taking couples together, so that if one is missing, another can bring them back.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's really a very good idea to have the motivation continued. Like one is down, another can pull them up and make the
Yes.
things better. So it's
Right.
really very good presentation, and I believe all those are listening to you now live, or those who will be listening you later. They all of them, they will be very benefited with this lecture. And as madam has suggested that we are going to continue with this webinar series, and there will be a certification. That's a really good one. I applaud for the chapter, and I really appreciate your presentation. 104 slides you have presented. It's a marathon. I can understand with your busy schedule how you have managed this part. It's a really very good one. Thank you very much. So that's what I wanted to interact. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Nayak sir, and thank you, ma'am, for your valuable time and all your motivation for the physiologists to step into the clinical physiology arena of physiology. So this is a task which we all have to shoulder to take physiology to the next level. And thank you for being there with us. Now I request Dr. Romlata Bhagat to propose the vote of thanks as a chairperson of the scientific committee. She is the brain behind the entire academic feast, which we are planning now and even for the future. Ma'am, please turn on your mic. You're muted.
Namaskar, ma'am. Before the vote of thanks, I just want to ask you a question, if you permit.
Yeah, sure.
Ma'am, many of our physiology departments are running integrative health or yoga or something of that bits and pieces. Can we do something to integrate everything and make it more meaningful and more, though I think it is going to be a challenging one, definitely.
Yes.
But if we could incorporate everyone and whatever they're doing, their expertise is already there. And if we can teach each other and if we can support each other, can we make the lifestyle?
Yes, I would like to say it's a very, very good idea. Yeah. So in March, I would like to tell you that in March this year, we had a all AIMS HODs meeting, regarding this as to which AIMS is actually interested in starting the lifestyle intervention clinic. And AIMS Nagpur will handhold all those people. And so we start with AIMS, a smaller group. Then each of us from AIMS can hold the hands of the medical colleges of their state, and there that's how we will create a chain. And those people who are interested, or those institutes who are interested in starting these clinics, can be helped or can be guided, and these clinics can be set up in the physiology departments of these institutes, so that we have to protect our physiology department from it. Right.
Thank you, ma'am. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. It has been such an honor to be a part of this wonderful event and propose vote of thanks. On behalf of Asopi Conraj, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Mrunal Pathak ma'am, Professor and Head Department of Physiology at AIMS Nagpur, for her impactful talk. Thank you, ma'am. My sincere thanks to all the seniors and pillars of Association of Physiologists of India, particularly Professor G.K. Pal, Dr. Latika Mohan, Dr. S.B. Deshpande, Dr. Narsingh Verma, and Dr. Hashmukh Shah, and all the members of our Association of Physiologists of Rajasthan, especially Dr. Manjinder Kaur and Dr. Prashant Priya Nayak. I also wish to thank our departments of physiology at Gitanjali Medical College, Udaipur, and AIMS Jodhpur, and other various people who handled this event throughout. A wide round of applause to and thanks to all the participants who made the event a memorable one. Finally, I would like to thank all those who are present here for making the time to be with us, attending the webinar actively, and helping us to make this event a success. Thank you, one and all. Please note that you have to fill the form, the feedback form, as it is mandatory for issuing the certificate for the event. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you once again. So with that, we come to an end of the session. Thank you.